thing that's kind of important that you might not think about is saving everything until the job is done. For instance, I just took out that carpet. You know, that carpet can be an invaluable piece of the puzzle when it comes to putting things back together. Usually you remember where everything goes, but sometimes you don't, or maybe you just want to verify. Usually that's what I use it for, is verification. You know, when we get the new floor in here, it's going to be, of course, in the same spot, so we can lay that carpet down in here, and then that'll show you pretty much where things were, and it can verify if you're going to have your holes right, or where some of this stuff goes. So I don't throw anything away. I don't even throw away the old wood. I save everything that I can that's still intact until the job is done, and then I'll finally throw it away. But right now I gotta try digging out these screws. I could just rip it out, but there's a box or something connected to the bottom of this. I don't know exactly how it is, so I'm gonna try to pull these screws out and get this centerpiece off. And maybe I can even use it as a template, but I think it's a little bit soft, so I know I'll at least replace it. But anyway, I'll get that going. All them years ago, 30 years ago, when I started working on wooden boats, that's when my first, boat job was doing wood boats. All the screws were, of course, full of filler, full of Bondo or paint or, bedding compound, whatever. So they get really good at digging the crap out of screw heads sometimes. Because it sure as heck beats the alternative, which is you don't do it, and then you try to back the screw out and you strip it. Talk about a pain in the butt. It's a lot easier to take the time to just get the crap out of it. I'm not even actually clear on the theory behind this, why this was screwed down and then just bonded over, why it wasn't just glassed over when it was originally built. I don't know for sure, but we'll be glassing back over it, that's for sure. Well, that's interesting. Probably just a big foam-filled cavity. Let's look at the boat. That's the bottom of the boat right there. That might be the end of the stringer right there. Well, I guess we'll see. Yeah, maybe we'll try to cut out this piece first, because it's the smallest one, easiest one. And see what happens. This piece isn't actually in horrible shape at all. I don't know if I can keep this piece or not. But that would be good. It'd certainly save the guy probably $400 or $500 if I didn't have to replace that one. But there's no use coming this far and not replacing it if it's in bad shape. Wouldn't make any sense. In the grand scheme of things, a couple extra $100 isn't that big of a deal. Yeah, I'm gonna try to cut this stuff out. And this is kind of when a project gets nasty again. And it's a real consideration. Something that maybe, if you haven't done this kind of thing, you should really think about. And that is, this is just a very, very dirty, nasty operation. Having to cut all this out, grind all this fiberglass to prep it. I would highly recommend doing it as much as you can outside or in a building that doesn't matter if it gets, almost ruined. I don't like doing it inside at all. Usually when I do a job like this, I like to do it in the summer. Of course, I live in Michigan. It's snowing right now. It's cold. I can't do it outside. I don't want to do it, but of course, this is my time to get it done. So think about that. If you want to plan it for a time where it's going to be decent weather. Maybe, not too hot either. That's the other thing. So if you can do it around 60, 70 degrees outside, that's really the best. But if not, well, just plan on doing a lot of cleaning, a lot of vacuuming. And I like to cut this out for the most part with a cutoff wheel. A lot of times I'll just put a cutoff wheel in an angle grinder. But I bought this from Harbor Freight. mainly just for this, for cutting out stringers, and man, I really, really like this. It's not necessarily the fastest way, but I found it's a good way to do it. It's fairly quick, and it keeps you from getting in trouble. You know, you can, if you try to get in here with a Sawzall, you know, I went through the bottom, you know, it happens. Sawzalls are kind of dangerous. I did see guys doing it with a chainsaw. Boy, I would never try that. Maybe they're far better with a chainsaw than I am, but it seems to me like it'd be awfully hard on your chainsaw, and awfully dangerous. I mean, if it's not dangerous to you, it'd be dangerous to the boat. It seems like it's too aggressive, but I wouldn't use it. So I'm going to try to just cut this out. I'm not cutting the wood with the cutoff wheel. I'm just cutting the fiberglass. So I'll get the fiberglass, you know, cut off, and then we'll, you know, the wood should pry up. It's maybe in there just with some staples, you know, or some nails. So we'll see anyway. That's the plan. I don't know if I'll stick to it. You got to have a plan. I'm definitely wearing some glasses and a mask doing this, because this is nasty. Yeah, I'll even try to keep these intact. Template, you know, reference in and in. I'm surprised the stringers actually go more forward. At least this one did. So we're gonna have to take that front piece out anyway. So I guess I'm gonna cut out this board and then see what we're dealing with. And then I guess I'll take out all the foam. Seems like the next logical step. And then I don't normally do it this way, but being that, you know, this boat is, when I, you know, put pressure on it, I can see the hull flexing a little bit. So even though it's on a nice trailer and it's kept straight, it's a bunk style trailer, I already checked it for straight, it's all good. Instead of taking them all out, I think I'm going to remove the short stringers and then put those in and glass those in solid before I, you know, pull out the main stringers and the engine beds. I think it's just safe because the bunks are right about where the engine beds are. So between the bunks and the outside stringers, that'll be more than enough to hold it. And even if I had to put some supports underneath the chines, you know, just some 2x4, something, just to hold that where it needs to be. But you certainly want to keep it straight. I mean, you don't want to put together a crooked boat, that's for sure. But there's so many areas of reference, you know. All of these spots are going to be a reference spot, you know, the height of the deck. Even though you grind it, you'll be able to see that. So if it's level across all of these and it hits, you know, on either side of the deck, you know it's still in shape. And if it's not lining up, God forbid, don't glass it together. Figure out what's wrong. Stop. And figure out why. Why is it not lining up? What you may find is that they built it crooked. That happens quite a bit. And so you just have to then realize, okay, well, mine is straight, theirs isn't, but at least verify it. I've had this foam dug out for the better part of 6 months. The boat's been covered, maybe 4 months, I don't know, a few months. Throughout the heat of the summer, I had it covered and vented. So it had plenty of time to dry out. And that's why these boats rot. You know, once the water gets in there, it never comes out. Which kind of leads me to my other thing that I do different than almost everybody. And that is when I'm putting this back together, put glass over the top of the stringer. As a matter of fact, I leave a couple inches without glass on it. When you wrap this with anything, you know, wrap it with resin, wrap it with fiberglass, it can't breathe. It can't air out. This glass does little to nothing strength-wise. All your strength is right in this corner. I don't see any reason why this is needed. Does it provide a little bit of extra rigidity? Maybe so. But they only have one layer of 40-ounce roving on here. That's it. I'm going to be putting on a couple layers of 1708 and some 1.5 ounces. So it's going to be, and that's biaxial too, so it's going to be certainly stronger than it was. And if you leave some wood exposed, it can air out, it can dry. I mean, what's the point of having all these vents in here if you can't dry anything out? Some people will say, oh my gosh, you have to wrap the top of it. I don't think so. I've been doing it this way for 20 plus years. Never had a problem. As a matter of fact, I think they hold up better. Anyway, that's a side note. It's real tempting when you do a job like this. I know you can get this far with the deck on. It's real tempting to say, I don't know, I think it's okay up there. Because honestly, it didn't feel horrible here. But now that I've popped this out, this wood is gone. It's just horrible. Let's see if I can pull a piece out and show you why you go through the trouble sometimes of doing it right. That's the stringer. I'm sure, a couple little drips. I'm sure I can rig it out if I got a big enough handful. It's just gone. And then there's one small stringer that runs up the center here, and I'm curious to see how that is. But we'll have to cut this out. That doesn't even sound good. I thought it was maybe just glass over foam, and then it would sound like that, but that's actually a piece of wood in there, so that'll tell you something. Yeah, it's just gone. Nothing left. So that makes me feel good. It kind of validated my thinking for having to remove the deck. So I think I'm going to get myself cleaned up a little bit and then probably just start digging out some foam. Or maybe I'll cut this board out. Let's do that. Let's cut this board out first. Then I'll get myself cleaned up and then I'll just dig out foam for a while. And I just got my glasses back. My wife brought them to me. For some reason, these are my favorite ones when I'm working. And I lost them. And she just found them sweeping under the kitchen table. So I'd have to assume my cat knocked them down. And that's where they ended up. Anyway, I got my glasses. Not that you care. But I feel better. As I'm cutting that, the water is just flying out of here. So the water back behind there is about that deep. So, I mean, they built the problem right into this boat. I mean, there's no way for the water to go anywhere. I mean, in a perfect world, sure, it never gets wet, but it's always going to get wet somehow. You know, even if you're just using it in normal use or rain. You know, the water will get through screw holes. It will get through places. It will, you know, come under your rub rail maybe. It's always going to get wet. And if there's nowhere for it to go, well, it's no wonder it's all rotten up here. It's a big water trap. But it's a double-edged sword. Because if you cut a drain there, well, then the water can get up in there. So, and the foam just prevents it from draining, but you have to have the foam to be legal. So, well, you put in some drains, you hope for the best, and you give it another 30 years. Which is kind of the purpose of this video, and I'm going to get to that as soon as I get this cut out. It's never what you can see that gets you, it's what you can't see that gets you. And there it is. Well, that's what it looks like up in there. You can see the amount of water that was just trapped. That bit of foam that's there is really doing nothing other than creating a problem. I mean, I suppose it all adds to it, but I don't know. Why put it right in the middle? I mean, put it off to the sides if you have to put it somewhere. And then at least it'll drain down the middle. Oh, the other thing that I was kind of surprised to see is these stringers are plywood. I thought, well, I knew the smaller ones were, but I thought these would be dimensional lumber. But they're not. They're plywood. So now I'm curious if they run the entire length, or if they stop. You know, they may be just separate pieces. Well, we'll figure it out. This is about 6 or 8 inches up from the bottom. And it's still that waterlogged. But that's common. That's, you know, kind of the demise of every wood stringered, foam-filled fiberglass boat. As the foam holds water, rots the wood. Maybe this was a little bit of a bad idea the way they did it in the front, but they all hold water. It's always going to happen. But even with that problem, you know, with the fact that maybe this wasn't glassed up really good when it was built, still lasted 40 years. And that's kind of one thing you really should ask yourself, you know, before you undertake a job like this. Maybe not before you undertake it, but certainly before you know, go about purchasing materials is, you know, what do you want to see from this boat? Like the end result. Not so much the end result, you want it to be nice, obviously, but where do you see yourself in 20 years with this boat? Like if this was a sentimental boat, like it was your grandpa's boat or your dad's boat, or maybe it was your first boat and your kids learned to ski behind it, and you know, they have tons of sentimental value, and you want to keep it around until, you know, they're old. You know, that's one reason to do a job like this. Another one would be to, if you got a good deal on the boat, yeah, or maybe it was just your boat and it's rotted out and you need to fix it, and you want to use it for another 10 or 20 years. You know, those are two totally different scenarios, and those would theoretically take two totally different, you know, sets of materials. I'd say the guys that are, the people that are, you know, have this sentimental value, you know, and they want their boat, you know, fixed up, usually they're going to hire somebody to have it done. The person that's doing it themselves, you know, is it do it yourself, or that just maybe likes to tinker, maybe doesn't want to hire somebody, maybe just wants to learn how to do it, or maybe just can't afford it. You know, that's generally the type of person that would do, you know, this type of repairing. You should, you know, really take a deep thought about, you know, what are you planning with the boat? Because I know, I watch, you know, all the same videos you do about boat repair, and, you know, you can see tons of different opinions on what you should use, or what the best stuff is. And it's all subjective, it's all debatable. But if you're just going to be like most people, I'm going to say not 85% of the people that is going to put new stringers in a boat is because they probably bought it for cheap. They just want to use it for another 10 or 20 years and don't want to invest a ton of money into it. In that case, you'd want to just kind of put it back together like it was. Maybe a little bit more mindful with the drainage, but to just use ACX plywood or marine grade plywood and fiberglass resin, fiberglass with polyester resin. This might be marine grade. I tried to look on there. I can't quite see. Marine grade plywood it's good, obviously, but it's just not necessary whatsoever. ACX plywood, generally speaking, a good ACX plywood will have just as many plies as the marine grade. Not always, but usually have just as many plies, and uses the same waterproof glue. I hear the argument all the time, well, the marine grade doesn't have any voids. Well, first of all, if it had voids, it doesn't really matter for this, but marine grade plywood 20 years ago was a lot better than the marine grade plywood today. I used some last week. First cut I made had a void about, 2 inches by 2 inches, right in there. So there's voids in it too. So what I'm getting at is ACX plywood's about half the cost. So ACX plywood and just polyester resin, same stuff you can go buy at Walmart for $60 a gallon. These here look like just 2x2s, 2x4s. I mean, you don't have to use fancy stuff. This lasted 30 years. Actually 40. This lasted 40 years. So if you want a boat that's going to last even another 30, this is all you need. So kind of the advantages to going with the cheaper stuff as well as cheaper. It's readily available. There's tons of information on it anywhere. If you want to know anything about the resins or the fiberglass or wood, there's tons of information. Most people have wood cutting tools already, maybe a little jigsaw, circular saw, with wood cutting blades. Wood you can draw on real easy with a pencil, you can see what you're doing. So it's kind of like 85% of the time I would say just go with wood and polyester resin. Just plywood, ACX plywood, polyester resin, and you're good for another 30 years. Pretty sure you don't need it to last more than 30 years. If it's already 30 years old and you put it back with ACX plywood and polyester, now it's going to be 60 years old by the time you need it done again. At that point, well, if you're 40, 30 years from now, you'll be 70. So I don't think you'll care about that boat anymore. Probably the motor would have died 20 years ago already. So, but anyway, that's one scenario. I would say if you were to do a job like this exact job, the 20-foot ski boat, plywood, resin, you'd need, let's say 3 sheets of plywood for the stringers, 3 for the deck, so 6, let's say 6 sheets of plywood and 10 gallons of resin. So it's about $500 to $600 in resin and $300 in plywood. So I say under $1,000. So that's one thing. That's if you're 20, 30 years. But if this was, Grandpa's boat or a boat that you just want to, for some reason, make it last forever, well, then you would probably opt for, some upgraded materials such as, Kusa. Kusa is a fantastic, wood substitute for doing boat repair, boat construction. Why is it incredibly expensive? But theoretically, it's lighter. And not theoretically, it is. It's lighter than plywood. I'm not sure exactly on strength. Strength to weight, I know is better, but actual strength, if you were to compare 3/4 plywood to 3/4 Kusa, I don't know which one's stronger. But that really doesn't matter. What matters is how long it would last. Because the fiberglass is really what's going to give you the strength anyway. It's really not so much the wood or the Kusa. So if you wanted it to last forever, well then you'd probably go with a Kusa board. Maybe even a vinyl ester resin. Supposedly it's a step up from polyester resin. I'm not sure exactly what the advantages are. I mean, there's stated advantages, better moisture prevention, protection, I should say. Maybe it's a little bit stronger. I don't know. I've never seen enough of an advantage to use it. And I've never had a problem in 30 years. I've never had a problem with polyester resin where I thought, geez, I wish I wouldn't have used the polyester resin because, this happened. It just never happened. But anyway, supposedly it's an upgrade. That's one thing. Or I guess if you wanted to spend a lot of money, you could use, epoxy resins. Epoxy resins, though, man, are sure hard to deal with. But at least theoretically, if you were to use Kusa and epoxy, you would end up with a pretty long-lasting repair. That's for sure. So if you're just though that first guy, the do-it-yourselfer, the I want it to last for 20 years guy, and you're seeing online somebody say, oh, you got to use this Kusa board and you have to use the marine grade plywood. Well, you don't have to, not at all. It's almost overkill. So let's think about it. If you use the Kusa and you needed that, 6 sheets of plywood, it's close to $400 a sheet. Let's use an average of 300 because we're going to have it 2 different sizes. So you're at $1,800. Resin, say you'd be another $800 for vinyl ester. You'd be maybe $1,800 for epoxy. So 28, 38, 4,000, 4 times as much. I can't see a reason that would justify spending 4 times as much to do a stringer repair unless longevity, was paramount. So just something to consider. It's all good stuff. I know that Kusa is great. A lot of people use it. Epoxies are great. I don't think they're necessary, except for that 10% of people that want just the best of the best and don't ever want to have to worry about it. Pretty sure the motor on any boat's going to wear out long before a full composite hull. They have to be replacing the motor anyway. So, but just something to consider. If you're doing it yourself, don't fall for a lot of the stuff you see online. This boat was built with plywood and polyester resin, and it's lasted 40 years. If you rebuild it with plywood and polyester resin, it's going to probably last another 40 years, and that's really all you need. The claw hammer is probably my favorite foam removal tool. You just got to remember not to swing real hard, because if you do and you hit the hull, well, you can crack the hull. You don't want that, so full of construction debris down there too.